Hi, my name is Kenzie, and I'll be doing my presentation on food, hunger, and agriculture. To start off, I want to talk about hunger rates worldwide. As you can see, I have a map in front of me that shows me everything you need to know about total percentage population of world hunger. You can see that the US, Canada, the southern part of South America, Australia, Europe, they're doing just fine. And then you see Africa, and there's little bits and pieces that are super red, kind of scary. Something interesting that I found in the book is that there is an estimated 900 million people, and that's almost 1 in every 8 people on the earth suffer from chronic hunger. One of the main and leading causes of world hunger is malnourishment, which that is what you usually see over in Africa when we look at if you for instance, if you Google world hunger, you're probably going to get the African American little children who look skinny and very unhealthy. That's the kind of malnourishment that we're talking here. Malnourishment includes healthy diets, which includes the right kinds of nutrients. So, to get back into another example of what specifically malnourishment is. It's a general term for nutritional imbalances caused by a lack of specific nutrients. In conditions of extreme food shortages, a lack of protein in young children can cause a kwashiorkor. Really hope I said that right, which is characterized by a bloated belly and discolored hair and skin. A kwashiorkor, oh Lord help me, is a West African word meaning displaced child. You know, a young child is displaced and deprived of nutrients, breast milk when a baby is born, etc., etc. It's just another severe condition in children who lack both protein and calories. You know, a child suffering from severe issues like this is generally thin and shriveled. These conditions lower resistance to disease and infections, and children may suffer permanently from this illness and as well as physical development. Continuing more with the physical development that these children are going through leads on to deficiencies in vitamin A, folic acid, and iodine. Those are more of our widespread problems. For example, vitamin A and folic acid are found in those vegetables that are really leafy green, probably something that they're not going to get or see very often. There's also deficiencies in folic acid that are linked to the neurological problems in babies. Shortage of vitamin A can cause an estimated 350,000 people to go blind every year. There's also a doctor that was mentioned in the book, Dr. Alfred Sommer from Johns Hopkins University, has shown that giving children just 2 cents worth of vitamin A twice a year could prevent almost all the cases of childhood blindness and premature death associated with shortages of vitamin A. I also want to add one more thing with this slide. I want to talk about the iodine deficiencies. They can cause goiter, which is just a swelling of the thyroid gland. There is something interesting that iodine does. It's an essential for a synthesis of thyroxine, which is an endocrine hormone that regulates metabolism and brain development, among with many other things. There is an estimated 740 million people almost in the Southeast Asia suffer from iodine deficiency, including 177 million children whose development and growth have been stunted. I think they were trying to be a little sneaky here by saying that there's people in the developed countries like us have largely estimated this problem by just adding iodine to table salt. Woo! Cardiac arrest, heart attacks, go us. Anyway, there's starchy foods such as maize, polished rice, and tapioca. They're in a form of bulk of a diet for many poor people. These foods are low in several essential vitamins and minerals. One celebrated effort to deliver crucial nutrients has been through genetic engineering of common goods such as golden rice. This is a strategy that is shown to promise, but it also has credit to argue that genetically modified rice is too expensive for poor populations. In addition, the herbicides needed to grow the golden rice kill the greens, and the villagers rely on to provide their essential nutrients. Sparing the amount of meat and oils, a solid base of regular exercise underpins an ideal diet outlined by the Harvard dietitians. modest amounts of fats and essential for healthy skin, cell function, and metabolism, but your body is not designed to process excessive amounts of fats or sugars, and these should be consumed moderately, which is what I'm going to talk about next. For the first time in history, there are probably more overweight people, more than 1 billion, than underweight people, which is about 850 million. In wealthy countries, more than half the adults are overweight or obese. This trend isn't limited to rich countries, though. Obesity is spreading around the world. Diseases once thought to afflict only wealthy nations, such as heart attack, stroke, diabetes, are now becoming the most prevalent causes of death and disability everywhere. Not to mention, in the United States and increasingly in Europe, China, and developing countries, highly processed, sugary, fatty foods have become a large part of our diet. Some 64% of adult Americans are overweight, up to 40% only a decade ago. Yikes. As you can see on this chart, that we're number one, unfortunately, but I want to kind of explain a little bit more why we're number one, and I'll do that on the next slide here. So here's the chart. I just want to start by mentioning like where I fit in on the chart. I am 5'6", but I am, for one, not 120 pounds. That's like the size of my left thigh. But the main point that I'm trying to get at right now is this is a chart that we base ourselves off of in the US, mainly like China, India. I mean, we can base ourselves off their charts as well. But if we go off of, let's say, I'm just going to take Africa as I have in this entire presentation, that this is their chart, they would not fit on this chart at all. They would be at an extreme low rate. Getting back to the main point on why I put this chart up is to kind of just give you guys a reflection on, are we all overweight? I mean, it's a ridiculous chart, don't get me wrong, but I can tell you that if without any of us knowing how much each of one of us weigh, I can bet you that 85% of us are overweight. Hopefully I haven't made you guys feel too bad about yourselves now, but I'm going to move forward on to the last part of my presentation, which I'm going to talk about the Green Revolution, organic production, and genetically modified crops. So the Green Revolution is a large increase in crop production in developing countries achieved by the use of fertilizers, pesticides, and high-yield crop varieties. So there are benefits and problems to each one of these. Some of the benefits are yields have grown dramatically with increased inputs. There's also efficiency is high for large-scale production, which aids in feeding billions of people. And also labor costs are low. One of the farmers can work in just a huge area itself instead of having a bunch of farmers. Now, some of the problems that they have are dependence on pesticides and fertilizers have grown, saying pesticides have sometimes lost effectiveness through overuse. Also, there's new varieties that can be hard for poor farmers to afford, so that wealthier farmers in wealthier regions gain a relative advantage. Also, an increased use of nitrogen fertilizer is a major source of greenhouse gases and consumer of fossil fuels. Next, I want to talk about organic production, which involves mixed strategies like crop rotation retains soil fertility, mixed cropping reduces pest risk, organic fertilizers and pesticides reduce costs of commercial inputs. Organic methods are more sustainable but don't lend themselves to the industrial scale production of conventional farming, which involves vast expenses of a single crop, such as soy or corn. Now, organic production also has some benefits and problems to it. Let's start with the benefits. The input costs, like fertilizer, pesticides, and fuel, are minimal. It can also be sustainable as a preservative or even improve soil, water quality, and biodiversity. Another one is that crops, like the varieties, are usually more mixed, which contributes to healthier diets and more stable farm ecosystems. Now, some of the problems are that labor costs can be high for weed and pest control. Also, organically, farmer food can be more expensive in the United States because it lacks the large-scale distribution networks. And like these methods are unfamiliar to many farmers, so it can be less efficient in terms of volume of production per unit labor. Lastly, I want to talk about genetically modified crops. They have borrowed genes and inserted into their DNA, allowing them to produce or tolerate new kinds of organic substances. Genetically modified seeds have increased the efficiency of many types of farming, which come with a lot of benefits and problems. Let's start with the benefits. For one, yields have increased with genetically modified crops, largely because herbicides help them to compete with weeds. Also, there's genetically modified crops have allowed expansion of agriculture into formerly unfarmed lands, including Brazil's rainforests and the Cerrado region. Also, increased global soy production has raised protein consumption rates in many regions, including China. And of course, there's always problems, such as there's new varieties that are expensive, forcing poor farmers into debt. Wealthier farmers and wealthier regions gain economic advantage that way. And in some cases, like growth hormones, such as genetically modified milk products, are suspected of causing premature puberty and other growth anomalies in humans. These effects remain unclear, however. And then there's also herbicides in drinking water that have unknown health effects. And that concludes my presentation. Here are my citations and sources where I got all my information from. Thanks for listening.